Hey, everybody, welcome to the show today. I think many of us believe that growth really comes from finding more customers. But the question I want to ask to all of you is what if sustainable growth is not about attracting more people, but really we should be focusing on attracting the right people? Consumer behavior is changing. People are placing greater value on transformation than transactions, experiences over possessions, and businesses that truly understand their customers' needs rather than simply promoting their products. So, today we're going to explore how customer behavior is evolving, why positioning matters more now than ever, and how attracting the right customers can create a stronger, more profitable business. Jeffrey Shaw, our guest today, has spent decades helping entrepreneurs build businesses around these principles. He's a business coach, speaker, author, and founder of the Self-Employed Business Institute. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So excited to talk to you about this. I think this is such an important subject. And you said something when we first met and spoke that really caught my attention. And you said, people aren't simply buying products anymore. They're buying transformation and experiences. And that really really stuck with me. So
Mhm.
what fundamental shift are you seeing in the way customers make buying decisions today?
Yeah. So I have an advantage in that my area of specialty is the luxury market, luxury buyers. And the reason I say it's an advantage, although most of my work, while I speak and hire in the luxury industry, I certainly consult with many luxury brands. A lot of my work is with business owners who are in not traditionally luxury businesses. And they're also business owners like yourself that want to be the best in their field. Or as I often hear, because people know I specialize in luxury, they come to me and say, I want to be the luxury version of my field, even though what they do has nothing to do with luxury businesses. The reason that's an advantage is that that's where things begin. Having been in the luxury space for more than 4 decades, we tend to see early indications as to where marketing is going in the high end. And then it kind of becomes true for everybody. So where I think I'm at an advantage is that by being embedded in the luxury market, I can kind of forewarn non-luxury businesses kind of what's coming. And even in the luxury market, we can see different sectors of the luxury market are more responsive to changes than others. So what we're seeing right now is you see, I look at everything as an evolution. And what we're seeing now is the evolution of experience because businesses have been talking about the importance of experiences for 20 years. It's good, but it's not good enough anymore. What people want from their experiences is true, genuine transformation. So, where we're seeing that in the luxury industry the most is in the hospitality industry. People don't want just the most prestigious resort anymore. They want to be changed. They want to go to a wonderful location for a vacation and they want to be changed. They want to leave. Maybe it's a more relaxed person. Maybe it is more in touch with what's important to them. They go on vacation to get realigned with their family. They go on vacation to get realigned with their own personal values, right? Because in real life, they don't have the time to even think about it. They're just putting out fires and going through the day. What's been interesting in the luxury sector is to see the industries that are responding to the need for transformation, such as exotic travel, hospitality, where the sector of luxury that's struggling with this adaptation is the fashion industry. And it should be no surprise also what sector of the luxury industry is financially at greatest risk right now. It's the fashion industry. So there's an absolute correlation between those that are understanding consumers' needs for transformation from those that aren't. And it is an essential thing for businesses to think about. How can you make whatever it is that you do? Some businesses it's easier. As a coach, we're in the business of transformation. But if you're selling suits, blouses, how can you make that a transformative experience? How can one of my coaching clients, he's coaching an auto mechanic who has a real attitude of transformation. and he's succeeding at it. He's now an auto mechanic that going to him, I truly believe from what I hear from, secondhand, could truly be a transformative experience because you don't expect the experience that you can receive from him from a typical auto mechanic. Every business needs to strongly consider how can they turn what they do into not just a great experience, but a transformative experience for the people they serve.
So in your book Lingo, you're talking a lot that there are, just too many businesses that spend all of their time speaking about what they do
Mhm.
instead of communicating what their customer actually values. So what it sounds to me as you're saying is actually the marketing language, we have a misalignment there. And so maybe in the past, we might have valued a VIP experience, but now a business would want to approach the customers differently, communicate that differently. So, can you give us an example? I think that's a really good one. And it almost sounds like a corner case, a mechanic being coached and he's succeeding. You don't think about a mechanic as, when you're taking your car to the mechanic as having an experience. And in fact, that's a great one because most people, if you think about taking your car to the mechanic and you're like, oh,
It's a nightmare.
that's a nightmare.
Right.
They're going
Yeah.
to overcharge me.
Mhm.
They're going to tell me things I need to do with my car that I don't need to do. So, in that case, can you give us an example of how his approach might have changed what he had been saying before versus maybe what he's saying to his customers now?
Mm. So, a little hard for me to speak to that specific situation because I'm referring to my coaching client who's coaching him. So, I don't really know exactly what they're doing. I do know one thing that he's doing to demonstrate the transformation. He's creating a lot of content. Like this is an auto mechanic who is, if he hasn't yet, he will be launching like a YouTube channel and he's writing content. Again, actions we don't expect an auto mechanic to take, but he's taking these actions because he wants to be, he wants to deliver a transformational experience. But you bring up, I think, Chris, an even more important point, which is about my book Lingo. So I titled the book Lingo, and the subtitle is Discover Your Ideal Client's Secret Language and Make Your Business Irresistible. The key is secret language. What I discovered in building my photography business for a very high-end clientele, I did not come from that world. I recognized pretty early on in my career, in my early 20s, that this was a clientele that resonated with what I did because what I was doing by producing beautiful family portraits that were meant to be displayed on the wall, you have to have a certain amount of discretionary income to invest in something of that sort. These were like art pieces. So that's why I realized early on I needed to work with clientele with discretionary income, aka luxury buyers, wealthy. The problem is I didn't know anything about them because I didn't come from that world. But that's when I realized that every business, every market segment has a lingo. Walmart has a very strong lingo, right? Rollback pricing. You know exactly the entire ecosystem of Walmart is focused on people who want to save money. They're cost conscious. Even Target is slightly different because Target buyers are not as cost conscious, but they're value conscious. They want to feel like they're getting more money than what they're paying for it. They're still thinking dollars, but as long as they get more value, they'll spend the money, right? So every market segment has to understand what is the secret language of your ideal customers. How do you communicate that up front? Because that is your marketing and branding. Every touch point to invite those clients into your world has to speak their secret language. And there are cues, right? If you're working with a cost conscious clientele, then there are things that you want to say that assures them that they're not going to pay a dime more than they have to, even down to pricing structure, right? So the psychology of pricing and Walmart, they roll back prices to the 100th of a cent. If you go into a high-end store, the prices are rounded off. It's $500. It's not $499. And we see this a lot even in the normal business world. And by and large, this is what puzzles me, but also concerns me. By and large, people feel strongly they need to introduce a product or service at $197, $199. You see that. You know how common that is in every industry. Well, that depends on the clientele that you want to attract. If you want to attract someone who's more cost conscious, more likely to nickel and dime you than call it $199. But if you want to attract the clientele that cuts to the point, they're rounding it off to 200 anyway. They don't want to play any games and they want to get straight to the point, call it 200, right? Because there's a psychology to who you're going to attract. The $199, $197, let's face it, you're not kidding anybody. It's 200 minus $3 or $1. Like, you know, it's a cute game for that clientele. It's not so cute if you're trying to attract the highest end clientele because they're not into playing games. Just call it 500, call it 5,000, call it 50,000, but don't call it $49,900. It's too cute, right? So you have to understand the lingo of the clientele that you want to attract and everything, your marketing, your branding, your pricing psychology, how you speak to them when you meet them, your sales calls, uh, all of it matters because you need to be consistent that you're still speaking their lingo.
So when we're actually approaching our customers then and we're thinking about our product or service, what we're really saying is it's not just in the language, it's also in the pricing. Why? And that of course is very fascinating. You drive down the street and you pass car lots. They do
Yeah.
the very same thing at the dealerships. And I even see them doing it, although maybe to a lesser extent, at some of the luxury dealerships. I have seen that. We have multiple auto malls out here. Why do you think so many people respond to that little game of, we know it's 200, but we're calling it 197? What do you think
Yeah.
it is in all of your observation about our psyche that makes us think, oh, I'm getting a deal, even if it's only $3?
And again, I only think that's appealing to a certain clientele. If you want the highest end clientele, it's not appealing to them. Like I didn't run my photography business for 4 decades and any principle close to that. Like it was just, I didn't, in fact, if I traveled for a client, which is frequent, my clients flew me all over the US, all over the world. I didn't even charge them travel because that's nickel and diming. I'm not going to charge them. My expectation is they would be spending $25,000. I'm not going to charge them $2,000 for a flight, right? So what I would do is instead of talking about something as nickel and diming as price, I just instituted a minimum, right? If I'm taking 3 days out of my life to go to Italy to photograph a family, while that's a wonderful trip, I'm in business. So I would just impose a minimum. It's like a minimum. It's like, I am happy to do that for your family. We just need to agree that you're going to spend a minimum of $25,000 because it's 3 days of my time. Where if it was a local portrait session, the minimum was far lower. I always had a minimum, but if I was going down the street for a family, the minimum was 5,000. Our average sale was 8 to 10,000, but at a minimum, I just wanted to know I was going to get paid 5,000 to make everything worth the effort up to that point. So I didn't even discuss and we see a lot of businesses do this, the add-ons, the little costs. Again, if you nickel and dime people, you can't be surprised they nickel and dime you back. But again, if that's the lingo of the clientele you want, if you want a clientele that's cost conscious, then you're speaking their lingo with every little add-on. We see airlines doing this, and I scratch my head. I'm like, there are so many airlines have gotten to this habit now. Or if you just compare a higher end airline, none of them are very high end anymore, but compared to your economy airline, you're going to pay for your seat, you're going to pay for your bag, you're going to pay. Next thing you know, you haven't saved any money compared to just booked with Delta in the first place. But you book with what's considered an economy airline, and all these fees get tacked on, and I'm not sure you've in the end saved any money, right? But it's they're speaking the lingo of those they want to serve. So I think why be I again I it may look like more businesses or the customers. I think the direct answer to your question is I think it's just become an accepted standard, and this is think something for everyone to keep in mind is that for you to be that transformational experience, for you to stand out as exceptional, unfortunately, the bar is kind of low. So all you have to do is be better than, right? Be more sophisticated than everybody else. And I just find most businesses are not the biggest gap I find in most businesses, and you sort of alluded to this, that most businesses do not take the time to fully understand the people they're serving. They're saying what they want to say. They're marketing the messages they want to put out, but they're not pausing. And I'll give you a direct example of how I know this. When I consult a team, and it's interesting, sometimes I've got the C-suite in the room and the sales associates. And sometimes I'm meeting with those companies at two different times. But one of the questions I like to ask people, and this is something for everyone listening to ask themselves, what do you believe are the top three life values of the people you serve? Most people draw blank. I see the looks on their faces. And that right there demonstrates the gap. If you can't identify the three most important life values to the people you serve, you're not speaking their lingo. And what's interesting when I have a difference between the C-suite versus sales associates will tend to know that more commonly. They'll tend, because they're on the floor, right? They're working directly with the buyers. They tend to know them better. The C-suite tends to be kidding themselves. Like they either don't know it at all or they'll take a shot at it and they're wrong. So I think one of the biggest fundamental problems is that businesses, large and small, don't pause and actually ask themselves enough questions about the people they're serving. What's important to them? What do they value? Why do they behave that way? What drives their emotions? What triggers their emotions positively, negatively? What do they see as a transformational experience? This is the work to be done. If you want to really have a strong business in today's world where the bar for the buyers is pretty high, their expectations are far higher than they used to be. So in order to not just meet their expectations, but go beyond it, we have to be asking ourselves far more questions about what makes them tick so that we can understand them better.
I love that because what you're really talking about now is not just demographic, but
It's
psychographic.
psychographic.
Not just how old are they and what kind of a
Correct.
job do they have and where do they work, but it's what do they believe and how do they feel about what they believe? Because I
Yes.
think people buy based on belief a lot. They feel a connection to a company. You believe the same thing I do. And you start bringing in that gut feeling that we have, which comes from a part of the brain that has no capacity for language. So you can walk into a space. I've done this before with homes and walked in and you're like, this feels right, but I can't tell you why, or it feels
Yep. It's the feeling.
terrible and I
Mhm.
can't tell you why. So now we're saying we have to come with a language that understands not only who they are, where they come from, and what they do, but how they think and feel about what they believe in order to correctly connect with them and what I call lower the buying threshold to where they're ready to make a decision or they're ready to choose us.
Yeah. I've been in business long enough. I mean, I started in business in the 80s. And money was circulating so freely and wildly in the 80s that you could, I mean, having worked with a very affluent clientele as their photographer, at the same time, they might be working with an interior designer or a florist, like they're working with many other service people as well. And the things I would hear them say about the interior designer that they're spending millions of dollars with, it was clear they were putting up with a real diva, but it was he or she was the name to choose. He or she was the brand that was it at the time. And putting up with really terrible behavior and diva attitudes. That does not fly today. Like today, you can be the best at what you do and be horrible to work with, and people are not going to work with you. Like it is equally, if not more important, that people feel good about who you are, even down to money trails. Look how many people make a decision, and I'm one of them. I make decisions every day on what brands and businesses I do or don't do business with based on where I know they put their money as a company Because if their money is going towards organizations or political values that are against my own, they're not getting my business. To the best that I can, I will resist. I made a mistake years ago when my kids were little and I had started a 529 college plan for my kids. And, I had an advisor, he picked the fund and away we went until I realized I looked at the breakdown of the mutual fund and was horrified at where my money was being invested. Like tobacco companies and firearm companies. I'm like, I am not paying for my kids' college education with what felt to me like blood money. Like I couldn't do it morally. I'm like, I'm not funding my kids' future college by investing in tobacco companies. Profitable maybe, but I have standards and I have values. So once I realized that, I need to restructure the whole thing to the point that I was clear with my planner, like investment aside, returns aside, we also need to consider what are the values of the companies that we're investing in? Because as a dad, that was important to me, right? So, and that was decades ago. I was feeling that way. It's even much stronger today, and much stronger with upcoming buyers. I have three kids in their 30s, and boy, their values are very strong. So businesses that are struggling to understand and have often bad attitudes about younger buyers, that they're this, they're that. Like, yeah, it's because you're not understanding them, and they will hold your feet to a fire on having good values and sustainable practices for our environment and our earth. Like they will hold you to the fire to get those. And if you're not providing sustainability and preservation of the planet, you're going to lose a lot of buyers in the future.
You know who I see that's really speaking to that crowd, and I see it on television a lot, is Amazon. They talk about their sustainability practices. They put that right up front as a
Mhm.
consideration for somewhere that you would want.
Yeah, your younger consumers are not buying it though.
You don't think so?
What? No, I don't. What I see, because there's actually a tremendous backlash against Amazon. I mean, Amazon, they are Amazon, right? They're not going anywhere,
Yes.
right? But no, I mean, I even know as an author, like there are authors that will not put their book on Amazon, right? So they're doing more carbon footprint free books, so they're only going digital. Um, for myself, when I launched my second book, The Self-Employed Life, being what the topic was, we did a huge push for independent bookstore sales. So the links we provided were there are companies like bookshop.org, where when you buy a book from bookshop.org, a percentage of your purchase goes back to independent booksellers. And that, having releasing a book called Self-Employed Life, I wanted to support those that were self-employed. We did everything I can. Of course, the majority of sales came through Amazon. But where you are seeing it that a lot of people overlook, but I'd like to see become more popular, your airlines. Your airlines will allow you, which is a funny way of saying it, to pay more to offset the carbon footprint that you're causing by flying. And I know this is important to a lot of professional speaker friends of mine because of the amount of time we spend on planes. We do worry about the impact on the environment that we're causing for our children. So I do know a number of speakers that will pay more to offset their own carbon footprint. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And it is an area that I will say I think the fashion industry is really stepping up. I'm a big fan of the brand Dior. They're working really hard to introduce more sustainable practices and less disposal of clothes that people no longer want to wear. Zara is also, which is a much higher volume brand because of the lower price point. They actually are really impressive in the efforts they're taking to recycle clothing to make it this how you can bring it back to the store. They have some really interesting practices, and I think we're going to see a lot more on that.
So, are there any specific warning signs that you would be looking for if you were helping a business? You're coming in to consult. What are you looking for that might suggest that they're attracting a customer that doesn't really align with where they want to go? Because
Yeah.
I think that's on both sides. I think customers are looking at businesses to align, but how does a business look at the customer outside of the demographic and the psychographic? So if
Yeah.
we've been in business for a while, where is it going to show up when there's that misalignment for the
Yeah.
business?
Well, and as a coach, when I come into a business to help them, the first thing I'm looking for is the misalignment, and it's usually really significant. Like they will tell me, I want this clientele, and as an outsider, I'll look at their website and like, well, that web, your copy, the imagery, the website is not attracting the same clientele. That's one of the biggest gaps. The upfront branding doesn't reflect the lingo of the people you're trying to attract. It's one of the biggest gaps. And it's one of the most important ones because that's the upfront, that's your storefront, that's your upfront branding, right? So that's one of the biggest gaps that I look for. So, first thing I'm going to do is try to solve the gaps. There's also often a sales gap, like the way that people talk about the brand or trying to make sales isn't aligned with the clientele that you're speaking to. Actual warning signs. Well, I'll flip the table here a bit. What I think it's also worth taking time to for every business to determine what does your ideal customer look like? And focus not just on the average sale that you're looking to obtain, but to me, and for me, always in every business I've ever been in, my ideal client is easy to work with. They're pleasant. They use our systems that we've built so that we're not wasting time and being inefficient. So as soon as someone's resistant to using the systems that we built, a huge red flag goes up right there. We would even, in my photography business, we had a very interesting litmus test. One of the first things we would ask a new client is, how do you want us to be in contact with you? Seems like a pretty basic customer service question, but actually we were fishing for determination of whether they're our ideal customer because what we wanted to hear is that they wanted us to text them. Because first of all, we had done the research to recognize that the clients that wanted us to text them spent more money. There was a direct correlation between average sale and texting. I've done the research. The reason for that is that I was working with the clientele I did, very, very affluent, some of the most affluent in the US. What I didn't want were the ladies that lunch crowd, super wealthy, but they have too much time in their hands, so they're going to drive me nuts. I wanted the affluent families where maybe mom and dad are both working. Maybe they're both high-powered executives. Maybe dad is in the workplace, but mom is fundraising, running a massive household like it's a corporation, right? What I wanted was busy people, productive, busy people who would hire me to be their photographer, not blink twice on what they were going to spend, and then leave me alone to do the best job I could. They weren't calling me all the time. They weren't nag. They were the clients that told me, you know what, Jeffrey, you design our holiday card that we're going to send out to 2,000 friends. You can even pick the phrase inside the card and we'll just approve it. Right? Jeffrey, you choose the frames. And these were my ideal clients. And this was common. This was what my business looked like. My clients just surrendered everything over to me and left me alone to do the job I was good at. They also used my systems, right? We built technology to make their lives easier, appointments and changing appointments and communication and bill paying. We had all the systems. If somebody didn't want to use our systems, that's a huge red flag for me because we built a process of being efficient. So I think you look at it both ways. On one hand, you clearly identify what makes an ideal client. And here's the thing, and every business knows this. If you actually look at your business, the clients that were the easiest to work with, you made the most amount of money. The clients that you bent over backwards, jumped through hoops, spent the least amount of money. Every business will admit that being true. That's where you know you're wasting your time. Your ideal clients should not be, and I'm a strong proponent of excellent service, but your ideal clients should not be people that you're having to jump through hoops and bend over backwards for. They will drive you nuts. Your ideal clients is smooth. It's what I refer to as frictionless. It's a frictionless experience for them and for the business. So to me, the moment I recognize friction, as the moment I recognize a client, the warning signs to me for a client that just there's a friction. They're not smooth. They're not easy to work with. I almost don't care how much they're going to spend because the cost of working with them is going to be too high. I had a client of mine, another client of mine the other day, tell me about a brand new client looking to enter her business, and the client wanted to know what their refund policy was. I'm like, well, that's not starting off on a good foot. Like, if your clientele is asking you right up front what's your refund policy, they already seem like trouble to me. There's an instantly not an atmosphere of collaboration, and if something comes up, we're going to work through it. So I would say the biggest warning sign is friction. Anybody that just starts feeling like this is going to be more work than it's worth, even if it looks like they're going to, I mean, it's always a balance we're making. They might be investing a tremendous amount of money in your business. You also have to look at how much time will working with them take from other clients and growth in your business because of the amount of energy they take to work with them. That to me is the warning sign.
So if we're listening right now and we have a business and we're not sure that we're fully aligned and we want to take some great first steps to start that process, because there's a lot. We've touched on a lot, right? So we've touched on ideal client profile, that's demographic, psychographic, then right down into marketing and the language that we're using and making sure that we're communicating what we believe in so our customers can make sure that we're aligned there. We're aligning with our customers in terms of what kind of an experience are they providing for us, not just what kind of an experience are we providing for them.
Absolutely.
This is a lot. So I can see why we have business coaches that come in to help companies with this.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of moving parts in there. But if you had to simplify it for everybody into like 3 good first steps that you could take right now today to get started on this process, what would those be?
Okay. So step number 1 is you have to understand what makes your client tick better. And I like using the word what makes them tick because it's more all-encompassing. Like, what makes them behave the way they do? What are their life values? Like, what emotions drive them? We could look at this, time and money. I would say by and large, most people value time over money nowadays. Like, people will, and I used to joke about this as a photographer because when I started out in the 80s, my portrait sessions were like 3 hours long. And that was an important thing to promote because I was always expensive. So you justify the investment by showing people how much time you were going to devote to them. As my career evolved, it started feeling like literally people were saying to me, can you get in and out in an hour? I'll pay you twice as much. Right? And if you look at I think I don't love making generalizations, but I would say for the most part, people value time over money nowadays. I joke sometimes, like, if that wasn't true, FedEx wouldn't exist, right? People will spend more to save time. So, but again, a worthwhile question is to ask, is that true of your clientele? Are you like the people you're serving? Are they driven by time or are they driven by money? It's an important question to ask yourself that most businesses don't even take to answer because your business needs to operate differently. Your pricing structure, everything needs to be different if you're working with a time sensitive clientele versus a money sensitive clientele. So start with doing the work to understand your clients better. What are their top 3 values? What's their perspective on time versus money? What emotions drive them more than anything else? Like, are they a clientele that's driven by a feeling of freedom? Are they driven by a feeling of security? Are they driven by prestige? Okay. So it's important. Like, I do a lot of work in the country club industry, which in the past based almost everything on prestige. For the upcoming younger 30 and 40-year-olds, they're not joining a country club for the prestige anymore. In fact, it's a resistance because country clubs have always been promoted as being exclusive. Your younger buyer, your younger potential country club members, they don't feel good about belonging to something that's excluding people. It's against their values, right? They've been raised in an inclusive world. So they're less apt to join a country club that's promoting themselves as exclusive. So prestige is no longer the number one driver, but tradition is. There are clientele, particularly the more conservative side of the younger market, they're looking ahead at starting families and going to the same country club every year for Easter or Thanksgiving or so they're very driven by family traditions. So tradition, country clubs as a tradition, country clubs is a place where you build family memories is more important than prestige. So these are the things that a brand wants to start with. Every business needs to sit down and understand what triggers your clients, what they value, what makes them tick. Step number two is look at your upfront branding, your website, your social media. Is there, and I could take a pretty good guess, like 90% of businesses aren't actually communicating to the clientele they want to attract. That's the biggest gap I see it. Like I said, 90% of businesses, and I can say that because I used to do complimentary website reviews where I would have people fill out a form and the form would ask them pretty basic questions like values and some of the things we talked about. And then I'd go to their website and 90% of the time I'd write back to them and say, well, your website isn't even close to communicating what you intend to say. Like what's in your heart, what you've written on the form doesn't match what you're putting out. So that was step number two. Look at your upfront presence, social media, website, everything you're putting out. And then step three would be to get the team all on the same page because a lot of businesses, big and small, are siloed. So marketing might get their act together, but the sales department isn't speaking the same lingo, or vice versa. Salespeople might really understand the customers. I worked with a brand a while back that designed offices and medical spaces. And they not only designed the space, they designed all the furniture. I got the best information on how to change this company, how to redo their website, how to change their sales conversations. I got the best information from the delivery folks, the people who showed up at the offices with the actual, because they're the ones moving in, they're the ones helping the customer. They had much better information than anybody in the C-suite had. And that's how I was able to completely rebrand this company in a way that even the C-suite even the CEO was thrilled with because it suddenly felt like what they were trying to say. They just weren't able to do it on their own. So there are your three steps. The three steps are know your customer, look at your upfront branding to make sure it's aligned, and three, get everybody in your company on the same page.
I love that. I think that's so on point. So, how can everybody follow you, connect to you on social media, find you on the internet?
Yeah. So my website is jeffreyshaw.com. I would suggest hopping over to LinkedIn, where I imagine most of your audience is. Find me on LinkedIn. Again, Jeffrey Shaw. I have a great newsletter, which is called Diamond Edge. And I'm very proud of the content I put out in the Diamond Edge. It is written specifically for the luxury sector, no doubt. But again, my point is that imagine getting the inside secrets of the luxury industry, which is what I'm offering, and using them in your own non-luxury business. You will be light years ahead of your competition because you'll be tapping into a mentality of a clientele that, let's be honest, is probably the most challenging clientele on the planet. It is really challenging to serve the uber rich. Like no bones about it. It just is. In fact, in my book is called Sell to the Rich, which also would be a great resource, even if you're in a non-luxury business. Sell to the Rich is my book. My keynote is called Sell to the Rich. And the very first slide of that keynote says, when money isn't an issue, everything else is. Because this is the secret of working with the high-end clientele. It's like money's off the table for them. It's not their driving factor. Unlike the rest of the world, when money isn't an issue, money isn't driving their decisions. So when that's off the table, you realize, oh my gosh, everything else is. The emotions, the service, the transformation, the everything, everything, everything. And that's why my advantage and buyer psychology comes from being in the luxury space, because if you can figure those things out for the hardest clientele on the planet to serve, it's so applicable and it will make your business stand out in a non-luxury sector as well.
I think that's fantastic. And I'll bet that's something that 90% of everybody listening had not previously considered. I know I don't think I had considered it to the level that I'm now considering it after
Yeah.
two conversations that you and I have had, both of which have been absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Jeffrey, for being here with us today. All right, everybody, you've heard it from our expert who understands luxury and how that trickles down from the top all the way to everything, even consumers who are working with non-luxury businesses understand and are looking for. So if you are looking for those behind the scenes secrets, jump out, take advantage of this newsletter and all of the tips that are coming along with it. Thanks again, Jeffrey, for being here with us. And all right, everybody, until next time.